Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mabel from CitrusPay. On behalf of CitrusPay, I would like to welcome all of you to the 6th edition of Upstart in Bangalore. This time we're talking about design for startups. Upstart is a series of meetups for entrepreneurs and startups. It's organized by Citrus Payments. Citrus began as a startup some 5 years back, and it has grown from a 4-member team to a roughly 300-member organization. And we've known what it is to start up. We know what it is to develop a product, grow it, scale it, to get adopted by over 22 million consumers and process almost $3 billion in transactions every day. We interact with thousands of startup entrepreneurs every single day of our lives. And in the process, we hear a lot of stories of how entrepreneurs develop their product, what issues they face in hiring the right talent, what are their funding challenges, how is it that they've designed their product, how they had to scale and maybe go back and redo or unlearn a couple of things and redo a couple of other things in their lives. And we want to give back to the ecosystem of startups by providing a platform where startups could come and interact, learn from other experts, subject matter experts, and plan their products or services in a more, to perform in a very efficient manner. In this session of Upstart, we focus on the topic of designing for startups. User experience defines the way a product or service is adopted by the end user. The better the design, the more the interaction, the more seamless the end user experience. As startup entrepreneurs, we often don't focus on the element of UX, since we are perpetually in a hurry to raise funds, and so we just design whatever is the best available product, the fastest possible way, and push it into the market. We always leave design thinking to a post-funding scenario, and by then it would have been, there are live users, you need to migrate when you're doing some kind of a design change in your product or a flow change in your product. We today have got 3 speakers who will speak to you about designing for startups. All 3 of them subject matter experts in this field. And in fact, it also turns out to be that all 3 of them have a background from National Institute of Design. First, we have Abhishek Ghate, who is the design consultant with Sequoia Capital. Abhishek works very closely with CitrusPay on the user experience and design part. He also consults many other Sequoia-funded startups. He's going to be speaking about hiring and retaining the right design talent. Next is Philip Thomas. Philip was Director of Design at Common Floor as well as at Flipkart. And he's going to be sharing his thoughts on design and dysfunction. Lastly, we have our own UX lead, Sakshi Srivastav, and she's going to be taking you through the UX journey for startups. Those of you who are tweeting about this event, please use #Upstart, @CitrusPay, and @YourStoryCo. So we'll just start the session. I invite Abhishek to come and speak to you.
Hi everyone, my name is Abhishek Ghate. I am a graphic designer from NID. I moved slowly towards user interface and then towards experience, and then did a little bit of design management and product design in different companies. So as of now, I am working as a UX consultant with funded startups, mostly in Bangalore, but also in Delhi and Bombay. So when Mabel asked me if I would be willing to talk about design, I was not very sure as to what things I should speak about, because in the last 2-3 years, I think a lot of people are already becoming more and more aware about design, about its value, and also are very cognizant about the different things like tools and resources available and things that they can do to make their product, their service look better, work better. So I thought that I should borrow a little bit from my experience over the last 1 year working with different startups, speaking a lot with different founders, the issues that they face. And one question that they always ask when they meet me, they say, yeah, we need design, we need a lot of design support, so could you help us find one? So I thought I might share some stories on that, and I also want to hear your story on this. So just before we start, just wanted to see a show of hands on how many of you practice design. So, okay, like about, say, a dozen people. How many of you are founders? And what about the others? Are you like from the product domain or engineering? What would that be? Product? How many? Okay, few. So I guess you might have more stories to share about working with design, but we'll come to that. So yeah, so that's my basic bio. Nothing so great about it. So yeah, so today's question that I want to talk about is how to hire and retain designers. But there are always variants of this, and we'll try and discuss it more, like how to attract and retain designer. Big difference there. Further, how to attract and retain designers who fit your requirement, who fit your product. How to identify the correct fit, and because I am also a designer, I could probably do justice to the question what designers want to some extent, but yeah, we'll come to more of that. A sort of a disclaimer here that this is more of a discourse. In no way I am prescribing a particular practice or a particular method which you can follow to get designers or to get people to join you. Nevertheless, like there will be variations and there will be corrections which you may offer in what I have to say, but essentially this is a collection of stories and anecdotes which I have experienced. So it's more of an exchange, and I expect some back and forth, so more questions and answers. So yeah, I'm not an expert on hiring. I'm not, I have no experience in being in the HR department, but I have experienced many interviews directly, indirectly, where candidates were rejected, accepted. Sometimes there was a lot of negative feedback from both ends to me as to why did I even introduce them to each other. So yeah, interesting stories. The other part, as I already said, that we learn from each other, and we have to essentially work together to solve the more bigger concerns within the problem of getting designers to work with the established industry of software product engineers, founders, and entrepreneurs working together. So, okay, let's see. So, one background, one question. Where do designers come from? It shouldn't be that big of a mystery, but at least in the nascent stage that Indian design industry is, it almost is important to touch upon this a little, because a lot of them don't know, a lot of entrepreneurs don't know where to go to in order to find these, unicorns in the forest. So what I understand is there are these schools like IDC, Bombay, Guwahati, NID Bangalore, Shrishti School, Bangalore, who provide the design courses which are most relevant to software setups. So these are the places which offer interface design, interaction design, user research, and related fields for people to be more primed to start working in this industry ready hand. There are other places that I know of. I visited MIT Pune last year, and I heard that they are offering interaction design course at an undergraduate level, which is probably the first in the country. So I guess this will be starting very soon. I think same goes for Symbiosis in Pune. This is from the more academic side of things, but there are many designers who transition from other fields of design onto the more software-centric places. Me being one example, I studied graphic design, but over the course of 8-10 years have slowly transitioned here. The same way you might find a lot of industrial designers, product designers, whom you would see might have moved here. In fact, one of my previous bosses, very senior person, actually studied textile design, and then over the course of 15 years has moved there because of the challenges she worked with, and then figured that this is where her interest lies. There is also another very prominently emerging category where people from non-design fields are actually becoming designers, or rather practicing designers. So you might see front-end developers. You might see people who did product management in the beginning, but while working with designers or while working in places where there were no designers, they started taking, more initiative. They referred to online tutorials and slowly over time gained experience. And that is one category that I strongly feel for, because they are the ones who are navigating this really new field and are making a lot of difference. Like, there are many good examples out there. Talking about needs. Sorry, there was this one piece here. These are the typical terms that you would hear on the right-hand side: interaction design, interface design, visual design, user research, product design. These are the fields that I'm talking about are most geared towards what software industry usually needs. So what do we need from design is an interesting question, because most startups, till the point that they qualify to be called startups, don't usually have a long-term roadmap, just because of the nature of the work. You might be working in a very dynamic environment, your requirements may change, you may pivot very quickly. So what you need from design, it changes quite often. But as a rule of thumb, as far as we're talking in general, I would always recommend that start with the generalists, and as you move forward, as you become more and more set in your ways, in your market, in your vertical, then you can move towards specialists. We'll talk about what generalists and specialists I'm referring to. This one slide that I've lifted from a blog where they talk about the number of designers ideally we should have. More than the number itself, the division or the relationship between how many people you have versus how many of them are specialists and generalists. So generalists in this case would be people who do most of the things fairly well. They could make your investors decks. They could make your initial ads. They could make your first line of the website or the app. Very basic visual design stuff. They might not be great at it, but it gets you going. And a lot of time, that is exactly what you need, till you reach a point where you start getting comments about, can this look better? That is when you start looking for specialists. So that is from your point of view. But there is another thing very important that I think most people don't know about, primarily because there wasn't a lot of design penetration around us. Like, how many of you have actually had friends growing up who chose design as a career? How many of you had friends growing up who chose engineering as a career? So because of this, you are very familiar with how engineers work, how their minds work, how their requirements are, and in fact, how the market is. But for designers, it's very different. And we are only getting to understand this. In fact, if I tell my example, I studied graphic design, and soon after I graduated and I was working as a graphic designer, iPhone came out. And one of the companies I was working with started getting projects around iPhone. That's when I started learning about that. So though it is true for engineering as well, but there you were learning about new languages or new implementations of the existing things. For design, it was more of reinterpretation. It was more of using the same principles that you heard about, but then applying here. So those changes started happening. And then only now we are getting to see those patterns and these new fields emerging and new roles opening up in the industry. So questioning about what do your designers need from you, I would always say that we could roughly divide the available talent into 4 parts. The fresh graduates, who are usually targeted by the startups because they could be molded, they are usually cheaper, and your budgets are always tied up. But when you look at fresh graduates, I think, these are all my opinions, we can question it further. I think they're looking for interesting problems to solve. Usually these are the guys whom you can't impress by saying that, you know, you have funding from Sequoia, or you have 30 people here, 20 sitting in Bangkok, so, you know, come join us and you can travel. Usually these are the guys who are not really fettered by that. They're more looking for interesting problems to solve and something which can one-up their portfolio as compared to their peers. Because one of the most interesting things is, if I'm not wrong, less than 1,000 people graduate from all major design colleges in the country, out of which I would say maybe 40% are the ones which would be working in software industry right on. Within that small group, everyone knows each other. Everyone would be able to give extremely accurate feedback about each other. So if you don't outshine your peers very quickly, you would lose out. And that is why everyone's looking at, you know, getting those challenges, getting those problems which can build up their portfolio. These are the fresh graduates. The young designers who are like 2-3 years of experience and have worked in at least one place are now looking for mentorship. They are looking to handle problems which goes beyond their skills. You know, someone can actually make a really good layout based on almost no information overnight, but they might have problems navigating a corporate environment. They might have problems voicing their opinions in a meeting. They might have problems in understanding why certain corporate decisions were taken. This is where they need mentorship. This is where they need someone who can, you know, guide them through based on their experiences. So these are the people who are little more difficult to get in startups because they would probably be the first person to join. But again, changes can happen. You might find someone who's interested in becoming an entrepreneur, learning on the field. The seasoned designers and the veterans are on a different line where you might encounter them a little later. Seasoned guys are the ones who are looking for financial stability, who are looking for, you know, exercising their management chops and working together with you to create value for a much, much longer term. These are the guys who are more interested in ESOPs than the other ones. And veterans usually are already starting on their own or only work with you on a partnership or a consultancy basis. But this is what I think is the most simplified generalization. Again, I would like to hear if you guys have any other experiences which does not work in this or which might give a different insight. So common issues which you might face when you meet these designers or different categories is you might not actually be aware of the differences within design. A lot of, like, I was interviewing with one startup maybe 3 years ago, and the founder was really interested, was very happy with my portfolio, and he said, yeah, we need design, you know, our logo looks really bad, our website looks really bad, we have these printed materials which need to go out, they need to be worked on. We also have a video team sitting in US. They need a lot of design support to make the videos lighter, well edited. So I was thinking that there are 4 different requirements you just listed. You need 4 different designers. I could do all of those, but I would be mediocre at best. So I didn't say anything. Obviously, I didn't take up that place, but what I realized is it was pure ignorance. I'm not blaming that person, but I'm just saying that because they haven't worked with designers before, he was mixing that, you know, design, oh, Photoshop, you can do marketing, you can do ads, you can do this, you can do that. So I think if you, as founders, as people who are looking to hire, if spend a little more time understanding what are the differences, that would instill confidence in the candidate about your outlook towards design and would obviously start seeing that this might be an interesting place to work with. You will, as a designer, you will not be, you will be valued enough. The second trap, which may happen not so much as a small startup, but as you start growing, that you may not hire enough. You may not have another designer coming in when your marketing spend increases and you need more ads, or your product expands and you might need more support on, say, A/B testing. One more thing which I haven't added here, but I feel is important, is there are a lot of people out there who realize that UX has become a buzzword and that everyone's looking to hire someone remotely who can call themselves a designer. You might actually meet candidates who are not designers but have worked with Photoshop or have wireframed something, and they might actually, you know, cloud up the resumes that you're getting. So I don't really have a remedy for that, but I'm just saying that that usually happens, at least in India right now. A lot of people with just like one hypothetical app that they have developed will start calling themselves UI designers. One pro tip which all of you can just look at right now to improve not only the adoption of design, but also helping your existing designer work way more efficiently, is to hire a UI developer. I have done this before and it worked really well, because there is a huge gap between what designer delivers and what your dev team needs to start working. You know, your designer usually obsesses over the pixels, about the colors, about the gradients, about the shadows, and then they say, this is the PSD or this is the sketch file. And the developers agree, and they said, but now we have to build this. Now, you know, I can't take this, put it in the code and start making it. Someone has to interpret it. And that interpretation in India is extremely low. How many of you know of good front-end developers? Do you feel that there could be more, we could use more front-end development? Why do you think there is lesser front-end development skill available? Yeah, that's, I think, something which I have also observed. A lot of people don't even adopt the front-end frameworks in their work, because they said, "Isme koi matlab nahi hai, I have to do back-end work, we have to do, like, you know, core stuff. There are designers to do this." So what I always feel works well, if you hire a UI developer, even though he is very less experienced, but if they work with the design team, not with the dev team, they become the part of designers, and they are the ones actually interested to pick up design, interested to work closely with, you know, making the app or the behavior or the website or the responsive design work very well. And because they can speak the language which works with your dev team actually gets more relieved, because they don't have to deal with pixel placements and, you know, QA talking about this should be bigger, this should be smaller. So if you can do that right away, that would be best. Even if you don't have a designer right now, even if you have the UI developer pick up some themes online and start implementing that can be a huge difference if you haven't started already. This is again one chart that I found, not really so relevant but interesting to talk about, that depending on the scale of your team, you could start finding people for the relevant skill sets involved. So this is more about the background. If you talk about the hiring itself, usually it varies a lot depending on how big your team is, how urgently you need these people, how much are you willing to, you know, spend time going through each profile. But very, very simply put, trying to simplify into 4 steps. Where do you find people? Mostly, I have found the best place for freshers is campus recruitments. Most institutes would be very welcoming for new businesses, startups coming in, even if you don't find any fit, but the students knowing about you, you knowing about the students, the courses, the kind of work that they do, and the general quality of skills that they have, it's a very, very good start. I've found that HR agencies is a very good way forward. They, at least the ones in Delhi and Bombay, turn around maybe, say, a dozen good resumes a week for at least the medium level positions. So when you want to go through them faster, when you want to go through the, the funnel being a little wider, then it's best to hire an HR agency. I don't think it costs that much. I don't have idea of cost, but it's a very good way instead of you manually scavenging through Corofloat or Dribble or some other place. Who is another important question. Ideally, I think that the product heads and or the founders are the best people to interact. It's okay if you don't know what questions to ask, but if you just help the candidate understand what you do and what is possible, I think that dialogue itself can add a lot of value into insight whether this person is a good fit or not. So as we had already discussed the what before, depending on your stage, you can choose a more general designer versus specialist. and how this is matter of debate, but I personally think it's good if you want to, if you give a simple small test to the candidate. You might actually have many rejections where the candidate says that I'm not going to do the test. It's perfectly fine. I think that a test is good because it helps establish a certain common context for you to have a conversation on. Otherwise, you are looking at someone's portfolio, someone who has done a hypothetical user research or a project about accessible mobile to farmers. You don't have any common ground, and especially because you don't have a lot of background in design, that whole conversation becomes moot. You just have to listen to what they have to say and then you go on to what you have to say. So I always think that a test is a good way to form that common context to have a discussion going further. Again, another important point of what compensation should be. Currently, given the rise in demand and the very limited supply of designers, they are getting a lot of different competing offers. So, in general, rule of thumb, your designers would want to be compensated as much as your engineers. And there is a question of ESOPs. Has anyone ever yet hired any designers offering ESOPs? So, yeah, I don't think I have much experience in that, but in general, it's applicable to designers who are looking to be in one place for longer because vesting becomes a problem. And as I said, because the demand rises, a lot of people are looking to switch. It's not so much about designers not wanting to stay in one place. I don't think that's valid. However, a lot of the times the requirement for a designer to work or solve a problem per se happens only in pockets in startups. It's not so much of a huge product which needs a lot of ongoing work. So at times there may be a lull period of 2-3 months where people start getting anxious, so they want to work on something interesting, and that's where the need to start looking outwards happens. So that's why ESOPs may be not so much of a fit for most of the hiring processes. So yeah, I think in conclusion I would say to start, best thing would be to pay little more attention and time to crafting a good job description. If you go to LinkedIn and look at the job profiles, descriptions posted, a lot of them, at least now, thankfully for the last 2 years, I haven't read the words ninja, rockstar, and something else, unicorn. At least those words have stopped being used, but still people I think are quite clueless. They use, in the one same paragraph, they say, I want you to know Photoshop, to know Sketch, to know Framer.js, to also know some QA, also know some development. It's not wrong for you to assume that, it's just that at least for now, and maybe for the next 5 to 8 years, there are very, very few people who are going to fit that. So it's probably best to tailor our own requirements as to what would be available. And other would be to just keep in touch. I think events like these, where we get to share more ideas, we get to share our own experiences and see what might work for you in a tailored context, in current context, because I think whatever I've spoken right now may not be valid at all 3 years down the line. Things might change, you might have some new technology come in which just like bypasses the need of a designer. It's possible, but as of now I think we need to just discuss more, understand more, and share our learning, share what we could learn from each other in order to make this culture a little more interesting, attractive, and supportive of designers as a new talent. So yeah, any stories that you would like to share which counters or supports these points? If not, then it just says that we are still waiting for more experiences about founders hiring designers and that ending in a good relationship. Yeah.
You've spoken more about hiring designers for the company, but I've experienced, I'm trying to get somebody to do work on a freelancing basis, right? And I'm looking for a UX guy, at the same time UI. I'm not sure whether it can come into a single person. And mostly when I talk about UX, people say I know how to use Photoshop. How do I know that a designer is good at UX? How do I see his past work? Because they usually share the Behance profile and expect you to finalize or choose them, right? How do I know that he's good at UX? UI is one part.
Best way forward is to just ask them to walk you through top 3 projects within that Behance project, within that Behance profile. You know, someone might post something which doesn't look good or looks great, but if they are not able to explain what's happening, if they are not able to explain what process they followed, you would start understanding that very well. But if they explain, you know, this doesn't look good, at least I wouldn't like that as the final product, but because of limitations of product, limitations of timing, budgets, and so on, I had to, you know, I don't know, trim it down to some extent. That reasoning is what you're looking for, not so much of the end product. At least, yeah, I think that's the best way forward.
UX, how do I see that he understands the flow or the process of an app?
So yeah, so they should walk you through that, right? So if there are say a ticket booking app, when they show you the first screen and you ask questions like, you know, why have you chosen to show these 4 things up front? And they explain that these are the reasons. Data suggests XYZ, or my client wanted XYZ, but I recommended this. Those insights talk about the thought process, and the screen actually becomes just a relic of that thought process being translated. So once you see that, I think that's the best way to gauge whether the skills exist there. Yeah? Okay. Thank you very much.
Next, Philip Thomas to speak about design and distraction.
Good evening. I'm glad to see a fairly large audience here. I was expecting it being Saturday, and this is actually the 3rd UX UI design, you know, meetup, sync up, what have you, which has been scheduled for today. So thanks for coming. I'm assuming since it's not so close to all the nightlife in Indiranagar, it's probably the content and the speakers and our wonderful hosts. My name is Philip Thomas. I have, in the course of my professional career, been an industrial designer. I've designed two-wheelers, motorcycles, scooters. I've been with IT services companies. I've, of course, worked with software product companies. I've designed cell phones, both hardware and software. I've run my own design firm. And that's basically it in a nutshell. So I think over the last 18 years, you can fairly, you know, it's fairly safe to say that I've seen a lot of design teams at work, right? They have, of course, invariably been populated with great people, people who really know what they're doing and what is expected of them, and that is a result of good hiring. And I'm happy to have hired a lot of people in my career, of course. Some of them are here this evening. They've come in, I think, for moral support. Thank you. Some of my ex-Flipkart team are sitting here, and I've hired all of them. So I think that it's been a nice it's been a nice segue from, you know, Abhishek's speech about you know, attracting and retaining talent at some level. What I'm going to talk about is possibly, you know, what happens once we have these people in place, and, you know, how do you then use them in a manner which is productive, you know, for your organization and for your business. I think I will, you know, come to this point. You know, why did I title this this presentation this way a little earlier? Or possibly, I think you should get a sense of that, you know, even as we speak, right? So again, Abhishek has, at some level, touched upon this. Is this something which is familiar to many people here? Some people, all people? Does it resonate? Ring a bell? No? Okay, so I am still seeing Rockstars, Kick-Ass UX, you know, Pixel Perfect, stuff like that, right? And I think my point is, while you're at it, this is the best one, right, for me. Let's take a look at whatever, right? Name your reference material, right? But I think this is a good time to actually take a step back and say why, do we have this fairly nebulous set of expectations? What are we actually expecting from a design function in that sense, or from our designers? Let's do a mental exercise. I think Abhishek has, again, done some of the groundwork for me. But some of you all actually raised your hands when you all said founders, right? Founders, CEOs, where are they? Fair enough. Okay, so could I just, somebody want to volunteer for be my first test subject? Maybe you can just hand the mic over to somebody. Do you have an extra mic? This gentleman here, maybe you can just tell us your name and.
I'm Tushar from TSR Design.
Okay, and okay, so here's the experiment, right? Could you, as crisply as possible, articulate what it is your business does? What is your business, your startup? What is its primary focus?
Basically, we are also into education space. So we basically design mobile apps and websites and templates of different sort. And right now we are working on VR projects. So we are into virtual reality. So we are conceptualizing different things. And basically we are into education space. So we design products and different softwares, ERP and different things for that scenario sector.
All right, fair enough. All right, somebody else? Maybe the gentleman back there? I won't take too long. Another founder? Somebody here? Okay, it's closer in the interest of time to proceed quickly. Find quickly your name and name of your company if there is a name.
Yeah, hey, my name is Bhargav. I'm basically an engineer, actually I'm not a designer, I'm a founder. We're building a music app called Listen, which is actually a social platform over music streaming services such as Spotify, SoundCloud, and actually, yeah.
Okay, so could you tell me then, again, as crisply as possible, what the top 2 features or the top feature is for your product?
Our app is? Okay, our top feature at this point is it lets you listen to music live with your friends. So you listen to music in real time. So we basically describe our app as sharing earphones. So me and a friend could be sitting, like probably 20 kilometers, I don't know, whatever, far away. Okay. And we could be listening to the same song at the same time together, and we chat about it as we listen to it. So we're trying to recreate the experience of 2 people hanging out in the same music.
Fair enough. Thanks, Partha. Right? So what happened here, right? I asked a fairly simple question. I set a fairly simple requirement. I said as crisply as possible, describe what it is you do or what your primary focus is. Do you think these 2 gentlemen did a fairly good job, okay job? I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate that? 1 to 5 is okay, middling, 5 to 10, great job. Everybody sitting in the back, can you hear me, or is that just the Saturday afternoon kicking in? I don't want to have to keep, falling back on known devils. Okay, so anybody, what do you think? Right. So okay, let me. I think at least in my opinion. So what I was trying to get at is right. It's very difficult for people to actually articulate what they're trying to do. Okay. Crisply, succinctly, in a little paragraph or with a couple of lines. And that, I think, is where all of this actually starts breaking down. Because what should be happening is for design to function the way we typically organize design functions in startups and possibly even in middle stage and fairly old internet fuddy-duddy companies as well, is that design is a delivery function, all right? They're there to deliver screens. Okay, you tell us what to do, and please do this by end of the week, okay? My point is that what does it take to deliver that, right? If you fall back on the requirements, or if you fall back on an understanding of product, or what it is you're trying to focus on, if that is not clearly articulated, at the very top, if you're saying you're founder and you're CEO, and you're not able to articulate that in an audience like this, it's not at the top of your, the tip of your tongue or the top of your mind at all times, right? How does that pan out and how does that scale as your organization scales, as you add more people, as you get into, layers of hierarchy and you start adding managers and, senior and junior and whatever, intern. How do you do that? You lose that clarity if you don't communicate that very clearly. If it's not very clear to everybody concerned in the organization, that this is what we are aligning towards, whether it's a one-year roadmap or a half-year roadmap or a quarterly roadmap or whatever it is, but at least everybody needs to know, it needs to be communicated. Anybody you ask in the organization should be able to tell you exactly the same thing. This is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it, right? And that is where it breaks down for functions like design if they've been set up to be delivery units, because they're pretty much at the fag end of this whole exercise, right? You hired all of these guys, you're doing strategy, vision. I'm assuming everybody has got this figured out, right? You know what that vision you have for yourselves, what that goal is. What am I going to do to get there? And then the tactics come along, and somewhere along the way, design is one of the tactics. We will do an app and we will do some screens, and let's have this again by Friday next week. My point was that if this is a downstream function as functional delivery, it's even more necessary and even more imperative that that function knows exactly what it is they're doing, because we don't have the time and the luxury of actually revisiting some of those things. And think about it again in the context of this kind of, an audience. If you're talking about startups, you're talking about very early stage startups, possibly, maybe not even funded. Maybe this is slightly, further away on the horizon as far as y'all are concerned. But even for people, when I think somebody here asked a question about how do I evaluate even a freelancer, right? My answer was going to be that you evaluate the freelancer on the basis of what that person's understanding of your product or the focus or that business need is, right? So coming back to this, when you have a delivery unit, which is a design function, if they're not very clear about what they're going to do, if you have requirements that are nebulous, if we don't necessarily build out the mental capacity and process in that sense in place, right? And we don't drive it from the very top, because that's what founders, CEOs, that's what you all should be doing. You all should be setting that culture, right? So when I was talking about dysfunction, that's where I was coming from. Okay, my point, if you don't do that, what does design do, right? It could be anything, it's lipstick. And you can finish the rest of the phrase. So if design is treated as a delivery function, expect, familiar with this term? Anybody? No? GIGO? Garbage in, garbage out. Exactly. Okay? Y'all need to be able to articulate what y'all want to do, why y'all are doing it, for designers to understand what it is I should design for. You can't design for something, otherwise it's somebody's own perception of what, and then you have a variety of opinions, right? Founder thinks I should do this, product thinks I should do that, designer thinks, wait a minute, it doesn't go with my color palette. But that's not what you want. You need that alignment. You need to be very clear about what y'all are doing, why y'all are doing it, what are those key problems you're trying to solve, and then the rest of the organization is going to be marching in lockstep to say that, okay, to solve this within this time frame, this is what I need to do. Design is then able to design for a particular set of objectives. We are able to evaluate design against that particular set of objectives and say, did this meet or not, against all those different alternatives which a design function would come out with. And it should not even actually stop there at that level, right? So that was actually where I was leading to. I think it's not so much, a design function or something which I want to talk about. I actually want to talk about organizational culture at some level, because it's very important that what you set up right now, what you allow to let slide today is going to determine organizational culture for a long time to come. And then, as you've heard, and as you probably know, it becomes very, very difficult to actually change any of this, right? The early responses I will get from people I ask would be like, yeah, we're too early stage right now. We barely started. We're still figuring it out. Everybody, and this is like people who've been around for 2 months to 2 years, right? Everybody I speak to who have been around for 5 to 7 to 9 years are like, okay, yeah, we're still growing. We're still a startup. I don't know how, but now we are in a particular place where we can't change anything, right? Because we've grown too big and we've grown too fast, right? So I think this is where I'm actually coming from. This is what I meant by dysfunction, right? That when you get to a particular stage where you've allowed this to slide, if you're treating design as a delivery unit, These are the ways, or this is how it pans out. This is how it plays out, right? Everybody knows. That is one assumption, one fallacy, right? Everybody knows what we're trying to do. Everybody knows what what our goals are. And I think we've already had a brief demonstration of something like that. If you're not able to articulate it, and as you play Chinese whispers and it goes down the line, everybody actually doesn't know, right? And especially for designers and people like that, they don't know. A product manager will come to them and say, look, can you just change this, add a button, I need this by tomorrow. That's all they know. So when you're hiring and when you're training and mentoring and leading teams and things like that, and I've done a lot of that over the years, right? I basically started out with 3 people at Infosys Technologies from the UX function. I started with 4 or 5 people at Flipkart, and then we grew to phenomenal scale, right? But so there's a lot of that people management thing which we can deal with separately outside of this, but this is one of the key problems, right? How do you then even instill in your own designers a need to ask the right questions to be able to expect the right kinds of answers, right? What else is very common? Starting with solutions, right? Everybody says, yeah, this is what it is, right? And that's why I refer to this app or this website comes in handy. This is what we need to do right away. But I mean, don't copy it, but yeah, this is it. It works for somebody else, it works for us, right? Therefore, you've already committed prematurely to something which you think has worked for somebody else. You've not tested it, you've not evaluated it. One of those points then is that shaky assumptions, right? That how do we actually base these hypotheses and how do we validate some of these things? Do we invest in user research? Do we go out to the market and even say like, yeah, I had a gut feeling that I have friends who want to share what I'm listening to. How many other people do want to do that, right? And what is it that people feel when they want to share? What times of days do they want to share? Are they feeling low? Are they feeling happy? What is it they want to do? Having those kinds of assumptions answered before you start, solving the problem, basically means that you're actually articulating the problem better. And once you have a better sense of that, you're able to then design better, right? Polishing the brick, churning the ocean, 2 sides of the same coin. You might agree that I need to do something like this, and then you're so invested in a particular solution, again, without necessarily, validating or evaluating against anything else. It might be a dead end on which we spend a lot of time and effort, right? Or you might say that I want to do this. This is my area of core focus. This is my top feature, which is going to get me that, paying audience. But I also want to do this, and we are this, and we are that, and we will also be social, and X, Y, Z, right? So how much of that are you going to be able to reasonably do at the same time? And how does this play out, again, in the context of design? Because these are the guys at the end of of that workflow who are going to look at this, and this is going to be this ton of bricks hitting them, right, every time. I want to do all of this. What's the alternative? So I think I've talked about how design is usually or typically treated in most organizations in this country. I have been trying over the last couple of stints to try and make a change. It's tough work, let me tell you that, because you have to start within an organization and try to change somebody, an entire organization's mindset, and then you have to basically be able to try and do that across an entire industry. And that's actually partly the reason I am here today, because I have been notoriously vehemently against coming to meetups like this and talking, because I feel I would be better placed, and I feel there's more value for me when I'm actually doing something, working through my teams and making sure that they are being trained and they are being grown and mentored the way I see they need to be grown and mentored, so that they can get out into the industry and then basically take with them, what I have learned and what I have to share. Okay, but anyway, coming back, what's the alternative to this, right? So I think I did, at some level, I have been able to do a couple of experiments when it was possible to do so. And one of the things which I want to share with you is something which I had done in my time at Flipkart. And by I have done is, I'm using the term loosely, the team has done this. But what was interesting was the approach in which, the way we approached this particular problem. Okay, so to give you some context, this was possibly November to April of 2013, 2014. Flipkart was very specifically interested in, at that point of time, subcontext, okay, possible evaluation of a merger or acquisition of Myntra. That was before Myntra had happened. There was thought around, how would, if it plays out, how do we position our offering vis-a-vis an offering which is possibly more fashion-oriented or more lifestyle-oriented. There was also an underlying understanding and current of what do people come to Flipkart to do. It's not a fashion destination as such. We don't have engagement in that sense. There is no stickiness. There is no repeat in that. So there's nothing to come back to apart from being able to have a very transactional conversion workflows. You're interested in something, you come in there and buy it, or you don't. Right? So I think the focus around engagement, especially, and having people to be able to come back without necessarily having to convert, was something which was different, firstly, and it was interesting that Flipkart was actually thinking about it at that point of time. So what did that mean for design, right? Let me just, can you see this? Sorry, I'm running this locally on the machine. So, of course, again, familiar with some of my ex-team here. But I think the idea was that for a business to start thinking about how do I do this differently, we ended up with a couple of learnings, at least as far as the design team was concerned, and of course, as far as product and business itself was concerned. So one thing was that the focus was not on conversion when we started, right? It was around engagement, around discovery, and that is how and it needed to be mobile specifically, right? It needed to be always in your pocket. You need to be able to just flip it open, look at it, find something new, and then that's it, right? So discovery was important, content was important, and then after that, of course, retail businesses cannot let you get away without having to try and convert. So there were huge numbers of conversations and arguments about when that catalog should be surfaced, right? Initially, the plan was that there was not necessarily going to be a catalog at all. Catalog is going to reside, as usual, on the main site. You're just coming here to do something very specifically and something very, very different, right? But what does that mean if you actually do come out with something like this, right? I'm not too sure if you can see this very clearly, but the idea was that you're actually interacting with content, and you're interacting with people who produce content, right? Fashion, lifestyle, you're looking at what trends are, you're looking at people saying this is what you might want to wear with something like this, at occasions like this. This is what you can do, I actually need two hands to... Right, so it was primarily around content and being able to engage with that, and because of that, to be able to then have people hopefully come back, because you're always refreshing your content. You're not coming back just to buy that pair of shorts or whatever, right? But that was there. You were able to then follow the influencers or people who are actually generating that content for us. You were able to do that. You were able to go back and also shop, if at all. Okay, so I'll just use this but yeah, I mean, you could say for this kind of look or trend or category, the idea was at some point of time, then you would surface the. So it's been a while since I've run this, right? Then you start surfacing the product, if at all, your catalog. And then if you're interested, you go in there and say, okay, buy now, blah, blah, blah. So I think the point here was that why were we able to do this very differently? I'll just touch upon what the actual end result of that whole exercise was. But what was different here was that we were able to, for pretty much the first time, allow the design function to drive the experience. It was not necessarily product saying this is what I want to do. It was not the business saying this is what I want to do, because they were always saying, look, I want to see that catalog up front, And we were very clearly aware that if you're talking about about discovery and engagement rather than conversion, you don't need that catalog upfront, because this is how people behave. This is how people are actually, shopping for these kinds of categories, right? At the end of the day, I think with all that back and forth, first of all, catalog became a stronger, parameter which we, of course, could not ignore. That was one thing. There was no way a retail business was going to say that I'm not going to have any product on this, and there's no way I can, no catalog on this, and there's no way that people can buy. But there was also then after that an increasing distance from what that initial objective was, right? So the initial objective was engagement. Afterwards, it became conversion. Design has done all of this in between. So what can we get out of this, right? I think the point is that, okay, it didn't go live. They bought Myntra. Myntra is possibly doing this right now. What do we get out of it? You need to have that clarity before you can design for something, right? Against that, then you can go back and say, okay, how was engagement? Are people coming back? How many of those articles are open? How long have they spent on those articles? X, Y, Z, right? You can figure out your metrics and all the signals and everything like that. But if that clarity at the top keeps changing, it will just filter down into something like this. The point is that the alternative is still something which is suggested here, right? You can actually step back or allow that time to step back in your workflows, in your processes. Even if you're an early stage startup, even if you're saying, look, I'm living day to day, sprint to sprint, there is a way to actually step out of that and say, what are we trying to do? What is my key focus? Articulate that and then explore the alternatives and the possibilities. Validate that as far as possible. And then you're in a better place, I would think, to give that business your early startup. How many chances do you get, right, to do this? How much of that do you have, right? How much time do your investors give you? How much time do your employees or whatever give you, right? I think there is a very limited window, especially for an audience like this, where you have to be able to do the right kinds of things, which is why at some level I disagree with some of the points Abhishek made. We'll discuss that separately in terms of what kinds of people you need to hire and when, at which stage, right? I know it's a function of budget and so on and so forth, but we'll take that offline, okay? But I think, again, going back, why did I say dysfunction? Is what do you need to choose? What do you do? How do you choose, right? Are you designing screens or are you designing the experience? If you're designing the experience, you will do things differently. If you're designing screens, you will do things differently. Okay, so I'm not getting into how do you design the experience, what tools do you use, blah, blah, blah. And again, I was hoping that, the other speakers here would, possibly deal with that. I think it's important that when you start abstracting at a slightly higher level what design functions do and have to deal with or, work with on a day-to-day basis, you are equally aware of, what they need by way of input. You need equally aware of what it is you're actually trying to articulate, what it is you're solving for, because that's the only way you can design. Design is actually, what is the definition? Anybody want to take a crack at it? Right? Sorry? Design is a difference. Anybody else?
To achieve some goal. It's the
okay.
form to achieve
yeah.
some
Design is a form to achieve. Yeah. What does design do? It's solving a human need profitably, right? And hopefully pleasantly, in as pleasant a manner as possible. These are human needs. If people didn't need anything, they wouldn't pay you for it, right? We're not talking about this is a business need. Business need is actually a human need which you have found a little gap or opportunity to actually profit from, right? But you're trying to solve specific needs or problems. You're not just thinking about things up in the air and saying this is what I will do. Which is why art is very different, right? You can have a blank wall and it's an installation and people might pay you $1 million for it. It's not necessarily solving a problem at scale repeatedly or whatever, right? So I think, to recap, right, I think for organizations starting out very early and things, even more important that you are able to keep an eye on the kind of culture which you're setting out. Right? How those workflows play out, how the different teams work together, how do you communicate, an understanding of what it is you're trying to do and how you're solving problems and what it is you're, which market you're trying to address. You need to be able to then demand that excellence all around, not only in design function. You can't only ask the designers to be kick-ass and I want pixel perfection and I want this and that if their inputs are not very clear. That rigor has to be there on those teams also. If designers downstream, then that rigor needs to apply to the upstream teams as well. If you want to give designers ownership, if you want them to contribute meaningfully, I think you would want to give them ownership, right? They have opportunity, they have ways, they can demonstrate that you can think about things in a different way, if you want, right? You don't have to tell them this is how I need things to be done, because that might be something, again, which we base on our past experiences, past references, whatever it might be. All you need to be able to do is articulate a problem. This is the problem I'm trying to solve, right? Then figure out, let design or whatever, figure out the alternatives, evaluate, validate, say this is our best bet for success, right? And again, the earlier you look at how organizational dysfunction affects your chances of success, the more likely you are to succeed. And I think that is very important, especially for an audience like this. All right, thank you. Do we have time for questions or something, or should I? It took up too much time.
Hello?
Yeah.
One of the things which I do when I generally hire a designer is I ask them to tell me something which they've done on their own. It's got nothing to do with clients, nothing to do with anyone other than the designer himself or herself. And to date, there's not a single designer who's given me something which they said they did something on their own because they're passionate about it. So I'm still searching for that designer who can actually show me on their own, other than the work, other than what they work for clients. Just because they wanted to do something, I still to date haven't seen a designer who does it for himself or for herself. And I keep telling all my friends who are designers, please go back, when you go back home from my office, send me something which you do because you want to do it. I mean, I haven't seen a designer who actually gives me that kind of a thought process, basically. So I tell them, when I interview a designer, I ask him, can you spend time in understanding my vision? He would initially say, can you send me an email? This is the responses I get from designers. So can you tell me how to solve this problem? Because I think this takes away your creativity completely. I mean, you don't think as individuals, you start thinking like how the client is thinking. And that's something which I don't work with. Generally my vision is about ensuring that my entire team can independently think and criticize me more to ensure that I actually have a very good product out. So the designers I actually work with are ones who basically think on their own and do stuff on their own.
Right, so I think the way I've understood what you've said, there are a couple of points which you raised. One thing is, do designers necessarily have passion, right, for what they do or for something at all? And are they then able to bring that to the table, whether it's actually applied directly to whatever problem or business you have or not? That's one. Secondly, I think thinking like clients, right, and customers. And then how do you get them to actually have or demonstrate that independence of thought? I think that is, if I'm correct, that. Right. Fair enough. So I think you can look at it at multiple levels, right? So one thing about passion and energy, those are not necessarily things which you're evaluating as a skill set, as a set of competencies when you're hiring somebody, right? You're looking at that to say if I'm at a particular stage in my journey, I need people who are self-driven, self-motivated, bring that kind of energy, and they're not necessarily clocking in at 9:30 and clocking out at 4:30 or whatever, and that's what you might be coming from. They might be doing other stuff on their own time, they might be playing the flute, they might be writing, whatever it is, but they might be passionate about that, but maybe they're not bringing that kind of energy to the table. So that, I think, at that level is something which you have to be able to just evaluate in terms of what are the kinds of things which excite them, what are the kinds of things which motivate them. When you get them talking about those kinds of things, you're able to understand better, how interested or how motivated they are about that. The other point about not being able to think the way you want, or not being able to understand that. If I may ask, what kind of designers are you talking about? Are these people, were they fresh off the boat? Were they the veterans? Or they
I prefer working with more of guys who just...
No, but who's demonstrating that kind of behavior, the behavior which you don't want?
It is even with people who have 15 years of experience, and even with people who have just finished out of college as well. But ones who finish out of college have more fresher experience.
Right.
And they're more fresher in their thought processes. So generally I work mostly with them.
Right.
Because they have this thought of, we give them the freedom, they basically come up with really good stuff. That's what my experience has been. But at the end of the day, they still always come and ask me, what is it that you want? But I'm saying first, you show me from your end, what is it you can think about and the way you function. Because it's also for me to understand how they function. Like how you're saying, try to understand how they function.
I think there's no easy answer for that, right? So, and I'll tell you why. Because again, I've had no dearth of people who've come in with 15 or 17 or 18 years of experience. And look, I should be, a principal or whatever. That is one thing.
Just to add to that, I spent 1 year and 10 months just trying to make kids understand this.
Right. So, I mean, you will get that lack of understanding, or possibly even somebody who you can click with really well because they seem to just grasp intuitively what's going on at any level. So I don't even necessarily prescribe the design institutes for that thinking, right? In my own experience, I found that I don't necessarily find the kinds of people I need at the design institutes. And there are a bunch of other places, and there also there are a bunch of IITs and things, IIT, Guwahati and things have a master's program which has a which has a design focus and things, and I've hired people from there. So it's possible to find what you seek anywhere at that level, right? You might find somebody who's a textile designer who then intuitively is able to grasp, what it is you want, what problem you're trying to solve, and then how might I best address or solve that. So you'll have to be able to discount at some level, a lot of these things in terms of what past experience was, what institute they came from, years of experience. It boils down again to that kind of conversation. If you're saying this is what I am trying to solve for, and if you have a hiring test or an exercise or whatever, you're trying to get them to demonstrate their understanding of product thinking, right? Demonstrate their product thinking for you. You want your designers to think like product managers. The same way you want your product managers to think like designers. If you are able to articulate that as a problem statement and say, look, this is what I'm trying to do, and how would you approach this? You might not even end up with screens at the end of the day. You might just end up with an hour-long conversation saying if engagement is important, this is what I will do, right? Whatever. So there's no answer. I think you're not going to get it necessarily as a checklist, which is why I'm saying, like, these are the places where you might at the most get a kind of baseline competence. They should know what they're talking about, right? But everything else has to come from experience. Time for one more? All right. Sorry, he has the mic.
Hey.
I think we can catch up later.
Is a menu-driven chat,
Sorry?
in terms of discovery, is a menu-driven chat better for discovery, or would a catalog manager be more in place?
Could you rephrase that question for
A
me?
menu-driven chat?
A menu-driven chat.
Yeah. It doesn't exist. I mean, there are a couple of companies like Hotline that use it for support.
Right.
But a menu-driven chat for e-commerce, would that be more apt for discovery than, say, a huge catalog manager?
A menu-driven chat app for discovery of the of products in the catalog.
Yeah, so basically you're chatting with a bot
Right.
or a person.
How do you say what is apt?
Sorry?
How do you articulate what is apt?
In terms of easier.
Yeah. So you can't tell, right now. I might have an opinion. But
based on your opinion.
Right. So no, so it's not an opinion ultimately. Design is also not driven by opinion. It's driven, and that is something that's where all of this stuff comes from, right? Jazz it up. I want something cool, funky. If you're a senior VP, then okay, it's purple button. Otherwise, I will think it's green. It is not about opinion. You're trying to solve specific problems. You have an understanding of what it is which is most important for you. Is it ease of use? Is it discovery? Is it, and then you say, how long is this catalog? How many questions do I have to answer before I get into long tail, right? And then I figure out that was one pair of cloth braided wooden bag right, somewhere, right? That's when it'll break down, possibly. So you can't necessarily tell. I think you have to be able to, again, say very clearly, this is what is important. Evaluate your options and alternatives against that, because then you have a set of criteria. Then you're able to say, for these parameters which are important to me in whatever degree of weightage, or, you know, I can say this one works better, this one works less. You can test and evaluate for that, right? You can test for just a general happy factor, feel good, how happy were you, or, you know, just working with this solution or looking at it, for engagement, for retention, for adoption, and then the task level things again, right? How long did it take to do it or whatever. You can evaluate all of that, but again, it helps to be clear about what it is you want to do and then how that would play out. But you need to be able to evaluate the alternatives. Was this the only alternative you evaluated?
There are regular catalog managers.
Right, but have you then evaluated in some manner side by side? People give them a task, say, look, try it this way. Find me find me a Nexus 6P, right? Which is an easy thing to find possibly, but then find me whatever. One of those obscure things which one seller has in Ludhiana or wherever, right? That should give you some answers. People might have an opinion. People, based on experience, might have an opinion. But I don't necessarily want to foist it on you, especially if I hear that you're planning to launch next week or something like that. All right. Okay. All right. Thanks a lot. Oh, there was one more? Okay. You're not saving anything for afterwards? All right. And we have another session, by the way, right? Yeah. Sakshi.
Hi, Philip. So again, going back to freelancers, usually you said that it's best to define your idea crisply to them. But my experience, every time I try to explain to them what we want to do, they want either an app that has done something similar so that they understand it better, and eventually design something which looks very similar to that.
Fair enough. That means they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, and secondly, otherwise they ask me for screen level details, very detailed documents.
Again, they don't necessarily know what they're doing.
So then what level of detail should a designer expect?
A
good designer.
A designer, if you're talking about a designer, like an architect or like anybody else, is capable of systems level thinking, right? I've done garbage management systems for an entire city in the world, for example. And that was when I was in college. There are those kinds of carts still running around right now, right? Systems level, and then as you break it down into touch points, into physical artifacts, into whatever else, now digital artifacts as well, you are able to then specify pixel, how it should manifest itself, how it should behave, how it should look, everything. So that is ultimately the expectation. You're not necessarily going to find it from somebody who is a web developer thinking they're a UX designer. You're not necessarily going to find it from somebody who's straight out of college, even though they're from a design school, right? You might find it from veterans. But a lot of that is then boiling down to how well they've trained themselves, and then how well they are able to understand a problem and then arrive at a solution. Design process is fairly standard, right? I have a need, I will research that need, I will broad base my exploration on whatever insights I've got out of that. I will validate, narrow down, I will iterate. Hopefully I'll come out with something which I will then have to, since I have to actually physically build it, I have to specify it, right? So you have to be able to do that. So you need somebody who can do that, if that's what you need. Or you need, like Abhishek said, you need different people who have different kinds of skills, which is why your teams become larger. Not everybody will have everything.
Is it usually insulting to a designer if you give them an idea from your side? Or, I mean, they have something that they share with you, but maybe you have something else you liked. Is it usually preferred or insulting?
So, not designed by me and not in my backyard. Those are common problems, right? But I think you should also look at that with a pinch of salt. It's okay to say this is a reference, right? But that should not necessarily drive product. I have no dearth of experience with product managers coming to me and saying, look, can we do this like this? And this is 2 days before they want it to go to dev, right? But what is it about that you're actually doing? What problem is it solving in your larger scheme of things? If you're not being able to articulate that for yourself, if the designer is not then necessarily able to understand that and articulate it in their own heads, I'm trying to do this. I'm not worried about conversion. I'm going to push that cart off. I'm not going to show you a product at all, right? They have to have that level of understanding as well, and they should be able to demonstrate that. And that is something which you would look for if you're hiring people, or you would want to build out in your teams. All my designers have been expected to think like product managers. I used to evaluate them as one of those little things, right, on their competencies, performance appraisal time. Because if they can't do this, then I'm not going to be sitting there and telling them what to do for each and every screen, right? That's not what you want. Right? Sorry, I think we're running out of time. There's actually another session after me. So let's just park that. Yeah. All right.
Next, we have Sakshi Srivastava of CitrusPay to take you through the UX journey for startups.
Hi, I'm Sakshi. I'm the lead product designer for Citrus. I don't have so much of experience as Abhishek and Philip have, and they have given great. But yeah, so I was in Mindtree working as a UX designer for 3 years, and then just went ahead and did my MBA, and now I'm back to design. So yeah, I'm just going to talk about what is that entrepreneurs can focus more on when thinking about design, right? And what comes to mind, like everyone today, at least in the digital age, wants to say, like, how do I stand out in the dearth of like so many apps? What is it that makes me stand out, right? Everyone wants to stand out. They're like, you talk about one, say, food delivery app, there are hundreds of it. Talk about one idea, there are already hundreds of ideas out there who have maybe implemented it. How do you make yourself stand out in that? Obviously, in the digital area, you see the screen. That's the first chance you have to interact with the user. So the interface, the way it looks, obviously matters. It does matter. I'm not saying it does not matter. That's a first step forward that a user may say, oh, that looks interesting. I want to step in there. That's the first interaction level. It is very important. The neatness, people talk about, how clean the app is and blah, 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 those all buzzwords that people use. Fine, they use it, and maybe there are some ways attracted to it. That's why they enter your app. Or let's take the analogy of a house. If you're in a town and all the houses are white or something, and your house stands out because it's more decorated or something, people would want to maybe try and explore what's different here. So yes, the interface of it, how the type, which type is being used, how neat it is, what is a font, what is a button, everything. The correctness is important, but then I would like to emphasize that UX is not just UI. Okay, it's not just the interface. It's an experience for a user. If you are any app right now or any product or any service in today's world is not alone, standalone. It exists in an ecosystem, right? So you got to evaluate the user's experience in that ecosystem. How and when is that person going to use your service or product? So let's take the analogy of a house again. Suppose it is in middle of a, surrounded by houses, and there's a road, there's a proper way, there's an ecosystem around it. You have made your service very beautiful. It looks amazing. People want to get there, but there's no path to reach there because maybe you forgot about the road, how you enter. Then obviously the user will not be able to enter your house. He will go to service that is more accessible or fits the ecosystem better. Let's put it that way. So think about the user. Take a step back. When you design for a user, it's for user, it's for people. Take a step back. For example, if you have a house and the temperature in your house is 15 degrees or 16 degrees, that's very good for you. It's comfortable for you, or comfortable temperature is 24 degrees. Let's say 21, 24 degrees, it's comfortable for you. It's really cold outside, it's raining outside. If a user wants to come in, is interested in coming to your house, but he finds your house is too cold. For him, the need is a warmer place, maybe. So think about the user. What does the user want? take step back before actually jumping into the solution of it. You may choose that, okay, anyone who cannot jump or skip or hop and enter my house, I don't want them. Fine, this works for you. But if you want everyone to come in, then think about them, right? We tend to think that, oh, the user is like me. I'm a user also. I'm also a user, so it must be like me only. Whatever I think is maybe what the other person wants. May not be necessarily true, right? It's not just you. You are facing that problem, maybe 5 more people may be facing that problem. But for 25 other people, the problem may be something different. So just think about it a little more in the term of an ecosystem. That's what I want to say when you design an experience, rather than jumping to the whole thing. This is just a small example of, again, taking the analogy of a house, let's say in a township, right? So when we say that, okay, I want to control the ecosystem because I'm not getting the right kind of people to enter my house. So if I do this extra as entrepreneurs, as early stage startups, what happens is, oh, you know, let's build this product. Fine, people are facing this problem, let's build this product. What about the other parts of it? So for example, a food, let's say I opened a restaurant. People are not coming to me. I want to take the food to people then. That's another block in my system, right? Because I'm trying to control the ecosystem. So more often than not, what happens is with startups usually, or maybe any big firm also, which goes into a massive expansion mode, because they go like, okay, I want to control every part of the ecosystem. So they start expanding. It's good. You can choose to do that. Or the other way around is you can choose to stick to one block, do it perfectly, but still have a bigger picture of what my whole offering is going to be. So it's like maybe a town. You have, okay, I may at some point in time, 5 years down the line, I may have to have a service. 5 years down the line, I may have to do this. You have that bigger picture, right? You know you're trying to control the user in some way, but right now it's better to just do one thing good, have that one block, build that one block perfectly well, and then move on to the next block, which adjusts or fits into the system perfectly well. You may have to do some changes, like all boxes may not be just squares. You may have to do some changes, like say, okay, you know, in certain areas my service is not working. How do I modify that? But when you think about a town, when the whole thing is there's a concrete base to it, when there's a concrete base to your experience for the user, you're very clear what I want to do, then you may just by slight modifications in that experience may be able to adjust that block there. Is that going to abstract? But I just wanted to take the analogy, not a very digital analogy, but more of a physical analogy, because we live in a digital world, but if you think about each building block, if you think about one app, how the user doesn't come to that app alone. There was a before and there was a after to that app. I just want to take one example here. While working with Mindtree, I came across this case study for, like, say, Avis. They are car rental service, and they provide their car rentals outside airports and all. So they were facing this issue that, you know what, there's a huge line around the counter because my processing is maybe not so fast. Can you just build an app? That was the, you know, problem that came to us. And we were like, okay, take a step back. Look at the user. Why is the line building too much? What was the journey of the user? So, you know, with, let's say, a car rental outside an airport, the person must have traveled from somewhere, right? And during that travel, it's all tense. You know, maybe you want to, maybe missing the flight, whatever. And you fly from one location to another location. You may be in a new location, or you may be a seasoned traveler, but you have to go and stand in the line again. And so there's a huge lot of journey to that user that is happening, right? Can we extract something from that user's journey and help build the solution? So I already know where the user is coming from. Can I provide a solution before the guy actually reaches my app or something like that? So think about the whole journey rather than, okay, I have a problem, jump to a conclusion kind of thing. Okay, so moving to specific products, I just came across this really interesting matrix while prioritizing your features as product managers, as entrepreneurs, as designers. You want to do a lot of things, but there's always dearth of time, of resources and everything. So this is a very interesting 2x2 matrix that I usually follow while defining the product requirements. Like, I have a lot of features, okay, on which one will have a high impact. High impact can be revenue, depends on whatever things you measure. Can be engagement, can be, traffic. And what is expected by the user. So I say, okay, must have. These are my must have features. Okay, how do I make the app stand out, or how do I make my service stand out? By providing some of those wow features, right? So those are the things that people will have a high impact, but people don't expect it. So for example, when when putting a form, if earlier we used to fill up the whole form and then press enter, and then there's a common example, and then the page would refresh and it will come, oh, you have missed whatever number of fields, right? Slowly what happened, people started checking it at the UI level itself. I filled in one field and it said no, it shakes or whatever, it shakes and says no, this is not the right thing, you need to fill it again. It's a high impact thing because you're saving users time, and it's a wow feature because the user does not have to refresh and wait and do everything. And that wow feature has now become a must have. So this graph is, it keeps changing. Obviously the features keeps changing, from the buckets keep changing. And as designers, as entrepreneurs, as startup enthusiasts, we need to keep changing with that, keeping the bigger picture in mind. That's all I had to say. And when we say, this is just one of the quotes that I like about Paul Rand, like people come to us and say, like, design it very simple, it has to be very simple. So it's not that people start thinking that, oh, I have to make it very simple. It's just, if you design well, then it just comes out as simple. That's all. Thank you. Any questions, or was it too abstract? Or
when someone's coming and asking you, they want to make it very simple. So there must have been probably a reason. So the reason with why they're asking you to make it simple, is it like the end user is finding it too complicated? What could be the reason?
It could be anything, and simple is also relative, right? Something that maybe let's say a travel agent finds very simple, just typing in, country or state codes and finding the flight things. I may find it very difficult because I don't know the codes. So simple is also very relative. Understand the user, the ecosystem, what they're using. If you give the interface, a simple interface which we find, a drop down or typing in, let's say Make My Trip, or any of these apps have, right? You give it to a person who is actually booking the ticket on the call. He doesn't have time to go through the GUI. He doesn't have that time, so it's complicated for him maybe.
Yeah, as an end user, maybe I just want to quickly get in, and what I want to get done with it and get out of it. So I wouldn't want to sit on the app for a long time, right? So maybe for me, if my concern is addressed, then it's more than enough. It's a simple app.
Sorry, if your address is?
So for example, if I have to book a holiday destination, so I want to go there, check out, okay, which is the place, which is the nearest flight, where is my stay, okay, this is the price, done. So that would be very simple. So I wouldn't want to sit there to check out 101 offers. Would that be giving too much information? Would be too confusing for an end user?
Sometimes it is, like too much information obviously creates more confusion in some cases, but in some cases, as I said, the booking person, he's also end user of some interface, right? For him, more information is relevant because he needs to tell the person who is on call, who has called up, the person say, oh, I need a ticket from Bombay to Delhi, what all options do you have? And for a business guy who is saying, I want a ticket from Bombay to Delhi, just book it, whatever it is. Two different use cases, two different people, two different personas, simple for one, maybe not be simple for other.
You said the very first thing, the very first look of the app itself is a very inviting one. So
in today's days, yes, it has become important. It does kind of
so how simple do you think it should be when it comes to too many words or color combination? Would that all matter?
See, again, different user target, right? So if it's a old person, the app is for the old person or something, and you write in, say, very small font or have too much information, too much animation, jazz happening, he may not like it, or some people may like it. I don't know. So it depends on what the target. I also said that, okay, if you want the person entering your app to jump, skip, hop, and come, it's your decision. You may be targeting only those. It's okay to target only a few people and build for them. It's not necessary that everyone has to target for everyone, right? So know your target better, know the ecosystem of that person better. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Hi, thanks for this talk. I thought it was really insightful what you said before, the example you gave with Avis, because I think that's one of the challenges a lot of people have when they are thinking, when they're talking about design, is going through the user story, which is starting way before they're even thinking about using your particular application, right? The example you gave with people waiting in line, there were activities before, feelings, thoughts that were happening before they even got to the line. So I thought that was really interesting, so thanks for that. Do you have any resources you'd recommend, particularly YouTube videos that give design principles? Can you recommend, or any blogs, something like that? Just like some 101 stuff, you know? Because I think that's a perfect example of a 101.
I don't have it on my hand, like UX Magazine or Smashing Magazine or
something for amateurs, like me.
I don't know.
Does anyone have any recommendations for?
Open.
Well, no, but I mean like kind of a one-stop shop of like basic design principles. I'm sure there's been articles, but anyone? Damn, come on. Someone should make it.
You try Smashing Magazine, they start with basic stuffs. So you will find different stuff. And any other recommendations, yeah?
If you're looking for some specific design principles, like for an app, that's for Android or for iPhone, then there are specific design principles that you can actually look up on the site. But for reading up on like how to have a good UX, different strategies that work for use cases, well, Smashing Magazine is one good place, and then there's UX Pin that is exactly in the web and app scenario in the place. So
what is it called?
UX Pin.
UX Pin. So this would be for like, for example, enterprise software.
Yeah, because it's your software is either going to be website based. If it's website or app based, well, that's the perfect solution for you. And if it's an offline solution or software that you're looking for, well, you can get insights from that as well.
Thanks. Thank you.
You were asking for design principle, right? So all these inputs are quite valid, but if you just really want to explore, then I would recommend reading about typography first. There is a very, very nice and popular article which is called Web is 95% Typography. If you just search for it, you will land up on the original article. And the reason I'm talking about typography is that it talks about a framework of arranging information using typography, which happens to be the base for most written information that we work with. And with those principles, when you try and break down your requirements, whether it's an Android app page or a website or anything else, you are forced to think within that framework. And only then you can start simplifying the flow. Everything else will become a good addition to that. But if you start questioning, like if a UX Pin suggests a login form to be a certain way, and if you start questioning as to why this is the way to go, typography would lead you mostly to the right reasoning.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, guys.
It's a great session, and I believe we've been able to add some insights and values to your thoughts about user experience and design. I, on behalf of Citrus Pay, thank all our three speakers for the time you have shared to share your views and thoughts about designing for startups. I would like to thank each one of you for coming for this session, and I hope we have given you some good insights. We thank our venue partners, Your Story, for letting us use the space. In case any of you are planning to use or are looking for a payment partner that can help you build a great user experience and design, then please reach out to us at Citrus. Ruchir is my colleague who's handling the startup sales. So you could even reach out to Ruchir. I guess his card is pinned into most of the brochures that you have. Also watch out for some cool offers that are getting shared and should be in your inbox by Monday or Tuesday. We are now opening the session for networking. To help you, we have some rolls and some beverages. It's in the corner room there, but you're free to use the space to meet people and interact. Thanks a lot, everyone.